The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us for today's webinar looking at GDPR from an access and encryption point of view. I'm delighted to be joined today by Manoj Bhati from our partner Gemalto, who's going to be walking through how encryption and pseudonymization of customer data can be a critical tool in your arsenal to achieve GDPR compliance. My name is Shona Bradshaw. I'm the Marketing Manager at Bytes. So I'm just going to very quickly run through today's agenda and then introduce Manoj. So I'll be starting with a little bit of housekeeping before doing a very short introduction to Bytes Security Partnership. I will keep it short, as many of you are familiar with this already. Briefly set the scene in terms of some of the key issues around GDPR, and then introduce Manoj Bhati. He'll be taking through how access, identity management and encryption can provide some key pillars of GDPR compliance before sharing some of Gemalto's encryption solutions for you to see, so you can see that in context. And we'll close with a Q&A. So a little bit of housekeeping. So attendee lines will be on mute throughout the presentation, but please do use the questions in the chat box to raise if you've got any audio issues, or if you have any questions around the presentations themselves. We will run a Q&A with Manoj at the end, so please do, as they occur to you throughout the presentation, post questions via the chat, the questions box, and we will pose those to Manoj at the end. So the purpose of today's webinar, we are going to be focusing on solutions and strategy as regards GDPR. We won't be going into detail on commercials regarding any solutions shared during this session. Of course, your account managers will be delighted to have those conversations with you post-webinar. We will have a recording of this session available, and the slides from today's session will be available post-webinar so that you can share that insight with your team. And we we'll also have a feedback survey at the end, so please do take 2 minutes at the end of the session to feedback the quality of today's session, so we can ensure that these sessions continue to meet the mark in terms of the content. So very quick introduction to Bytes Security Partnerships and what we offer. We are a security specialist reseller within the Bytes Technology Group. We've been focusing solely on network and content security for over 16 years. After purchase by Bytes in 2011, we've remained a completely independent company within the group. That allows us to continue to focus on delivering value and expertise in security specialist insight. We are part of multi-billion Bytes Group, so we're able to provide resources as part of a larger group. But the most important thing about working with Bytes is that we offer security expertise and full support for all of the technologies that we introduce to customers. And this allows us to have top-tier vendor statuses and add value to customers, both in terms of commercial value but also technical insight around the areas we work in. So where do we work? We work across network security, next generation firewall, web security, data loss prevention, access, authentication and encryption, which is the focus of today's webinar. To give an idea of within those areas what we offer, so we have a in-house consultancy team that delivers installation, maintenance and support around technologies, an in-house direct escalation engineer support service 24/7 or business hours. We offer security strategy development, technology mapping and scoping and market and technology analysis with sessions like today, but also on-site via our consultancy team. So a little bit about GDPR just to set the scene. Why is it a game changer? So firstly, it extends the existing Data Protection Act and also adds new obligations to data controllers and data processors. So there's a raft of new requirements which companies have to get their head around within the next 12 to 18 months. Also, it's one of the few pieces of legislation that is truly global. So regardless of where companies are based themselves, if they process and hold personal data of EU citizens, then GDPR essentially trumps local legislation has to be complied with. Within the UK, in or out, Brexit-wise, the rules will apply. So firstly, as the the GDPR is set to come in prior to Brexit, but also secondly, as UK was so heavily involved in writing the legislation themselves. The fines, they are significant, up to 4% of global revenue. So for smaller organisations within larger groups, such as ourselves, they are really to be, they're not to be cost at. They are bringing a heavy stick to the carrot of the cleaning up data protection. They also require an interdepartmental approach. So preparing for GDPR will require legal compliance teams, IT departments, HR and the board to work together to be truly compliant. There's new legislation and rules around customer consent for data processing, and customers now have the right to be forgotten and deleted, which requires business processes and IT processes to be put into place to achieve that. Lastly, it is a journey to compliance. There is no silver bullet or one-step approach which will achieve compliance, but solutions do exist to aid in compliance, to put appropriate technology measures in place to aid in compliance and to show the ICO that your business is serious about GDPR and is taking steps to comply, and that's the most important thing, really. With that in mind, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by one of our core partners, Gemalto, and Manoj Bhati, who is one of their senior security engineers and GDPR specialists. Gemalto are a global Gartner Magic Quadrant leader in authentication and encryption and have decades of experience in aiding organisations with access and authentication solutions. We've been a gold partner of theirs for 5+ years, and some of the topics and the solutions today that Manoj will present to you and talk to you about relate to how encryption and key management solutions can aid in GDPR compliance. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Manoj, who will take you through 30 minutes in understanding how these technologies can aid in compliance, and then I'll pop back on the line to pose your questions to Manoj at the end. Thank you very much. Over to Manoj.
Thank you very much, Shona. Just give me 1 second. Let me quickly share my screen. As soon as I figure this out. Okay, perfect. So I hope everyone can see my screen.
Yes, I can see it, Manoj. I'm going to mute out now.
Thank you so much. So we chose the hottest topic on the block, which is the GDPR, for this particular seminar. These are a few of the points that I'll take you through in the next few minutes. So now the biggest question is why GDPR and why now? If you see the answer for why GDPR and why now, the 70% of the breaches that happened in last few years, if we choose from year 2013 and onwards, were due to the weak or the stolen password. 80% of the security investment was, however, on the perimeter security. 90% of the companies, they had no policies around the keys, and when we talk about the keys, we are talking about the encryption keys. Let's see, how does it figure out? If you see on the right hand side of the screen, you will be able to see that the 53% of the total identity thefts the total number of breaches were because of the identity theft. Now, this simply means they were using simple passwords to log into to any of the applications or their servers, and someone was able to identify their passwords and they were breached. And with the total number of breaches increasing every single day, each layer that you see, each layer of security that you have in a data center is getting thin day by day. Now, if you see the GDPR, what exactly does it simply means to an organization? It simply means that it is a security or the privacy by design. It is not giving you a user from an organization's perspective. It's not, it requires an organization to create privacy by design. It's not an option anymore for the end user to choose for opt-in or opt-out. There are a lot of different ways in which are defined in GDPR. If you see the bold text that says the pseudonymization and the encryption of the personal data. That simply means if you are trying to achieve data security when trying to comply to GDPR, you must be using the encryption of the data or the pseudonymization of the data, which essentially means the same thing. Now, if you see, there are a couple of words like controllers and processors. These are explained in the slides later. However, in case of the data breach, you are liable to report it to report this particular breach within the next 72 hours, as soon as you know that the breach has occurred. Now, if you don't, then it is then you will be questioned of why you did not say that report that breach into the in the 72 hours. However, later in one of the slides, it's explained how exactly you can save yourself from this particular situation. Now, what does the privacy by design means? There are 7 principles for privacy by design, which I explain. All of these are explained one by one in next few slides. So, proactive and not reactive approach. It simply means that it simply means that the reaction should always be proactive. That means as an organization, you must decide that data is being secured, and you should not take action only after the data is being breached. You have been breached, data has been lost. You should be designing your way up. Take data as the crown jewels. Think of data. Try to secure the data and move your way up. At the present moment, we are all thinking of the perimeter security, and then we are thinking of our way down to the data. It should not be like this. We should always protect the data first and then move our way up into the security. So it should be a proactive approach, not a reactive approach. Privacy as the default setting. So there should be no checkbox that user needs to choose that says I want to be anonymous, or I do not want certain things. Privacy it should be as a default setting. There should be no opt-in feature for privacy for end users. Privacy must be embedded into the design itself. That simply means the data, when you are storing the data within your organization, there should be a lot of granular controls. There should be separation of duties. All those things must be embedded into the design and not be thought later on. Full functionality, positive sum and no zero sum. The organization must not think of privacy versus security. They must think of both. Both must go together. So not only they should be sensitive towards the privacy of a user, they should also think about the security of the user as well. It should be a total end-to-end security. So when an organization is collecting the data, they should be collecting it securely. So for example, if you are entering a credit card number, an organization must design a system to make sure that the credit card numbers are entered in a secure way. However, when they are trying to forget the data, they are trying to destruct the data or store the data at some of the locations, they must take full responsibility of the security of the data when they're storing or destroying the data at the later time as well. Visibility and transparency, it's pretty open, operating according to objective, independent verifications, trust but verify. It simply means you should not only perform the internal audits and say we are safe, you should be audited by the third parties as well, independent verifications, trust but verify. And the last is respect for users' privacy. Keep it user-centric. As I said, respect as I said earlier, it should be any organization should concentrate on the data first. So data simply means the user's data, and move the way up. So all they must think of is the privacy of the user, how they can protect the data that user is trusting you with. So any data that user enters on your website, any data that user shares with you, your organizations, and as an organization you later share it with your partners, how you have to make sure that all that data is being kept private. It's not being open and clear, floating around in your organization, on emails, put it on Excel sheets. Even if it is put on the actual Excel sheets, you have to make sure that there are enough controls available to make sure that that data cannot be leaked or breached by internal or the external users. In simple terms, it is giving an organizations to rethink about the whole of the the projects that they're working on. So project initiation, data analysis, privacy analysis, and privacy impact, all that should be taken care in the when they're trying to design the privacy. What are the data controls and the data processor, and what's the difference that the GDPR brings when it comes to the data controllers and the data processors? So data controllers are actually the owner of the data. So any organization who is the organization with which a user is dealing with, who owns the user's data, is the data controller, and data processors are the third party who processes or work with this user's data. In the past, the only only organization responsible for user data was the data controllers. However, data processor, the third party, if your third party resides in Brazil, Philippines, or North America, or South America, or Asia, or anywhere else, which is not in EU boundaries, however, you're still working with the data of the EU or the UK residents, so they all come into picture. If you are sharing your data with them, it all comes into the picture. This is the big change than the regular compliances that you have had in the past. As I said in one of the previous slides, if you are being breached, you must notify this in 72 hours, suggesting that you have been breached, and these are the records, these are the number of records that you think are being compromised. However, you are not liable to report this if you know that the data that has been breached or that has been leaked or stolen is encrypted data. That's the data that has been anonymized. So it simply means that if you're encrypting your data, and if someone steals the encrypted data, it absolutely means nothing. Think of it, any of the breaches that happen, including the TalkTalk breach or the Yahoo or the Target breach, how it would have sounded. Someone would have said, yes, we know we are being breached. Someone was able to get into our data centers and steal 1 million, 7 million, 10 million records of the users. However, despite of the fact we have been breached, the data has been stolen, that data was encrypted and is of no one's use. So this is the difference that GDPR is trying to bring for the users, from the user's perspective. Now, when it comes to the difference between rest of the other compliances that we had till date and GDPR is this, because GDPR simply means if you have been breached, which is a normal data breach, the penalties are really very high. So in any which ways, the by default is 10 million euros for normal data breaches, and or the 2% of the worldwide annual turnover, or whichever is higher. That simply means that the amount of money that you would be paying would not only on the breach where you have to get the forensics and everything else, and the auditors and how did the breach happen. You have to spend money on that, as well as at the same time you have to pay a 10 million euros in case of normal data breaches, 20 million euros in case of the severe data breaches, or the 4% of the worldwide turnover. If you take an example, this is exactly how it would have turned out to be for an MBS in 2012. So that means we are simply talking about a huge number of data, huge number of money. Now, when it comes to Gemalto, we have a completely new mindset. And I just wanted to bring it to your notice that this is not the mindset that we got after we learned about GDPR. If you follow Gemalto, SafeNet products, this is the same message that we are trying to give for many years now, is secure the breach. Now, what does secure the breach means? It simply means an organization must accept that they will be breached one day. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when they'll be breached. So now accept the fact that you'll be breached, or you may be currently under the breach and you don't know at the present moment of time. And then think about data as the new perimeter. Think about data as the center of everything, not the perimeter at the center of everything. Just because then these are not the times where someone would get into your data center to flash a simple message on your screen saying, oh, you have been breached, or any other funny or witty messages. They will come into your data center to get to your data. So if data is not encrypted where it sits, that means after breaching your data, after breaching your data center by whatever means, they could come penetrate firewalls, they could come through the social engineering attacks. Everything is in scope for a hacker. Nothing is out of scope. So you can't simply think of one particular solution, implement one particular solution and think you are safe just because everything from a hacker's perspective, he wants the data no matter what. So everything from a hacker's perspective, everything is in scope. So think of data, try to protect data where it sits, data at rest. And then secure the breach. The third point is attach the security to the data and the application. That means control the access to the application that a user or to the network servers or to the servers that you are that you're using. So accept the breach, protect the data, and when data has been protected, if you are even in the case you are being breached, the data that someone gets away with is the encrypted data that no one can use or it's of no one's use. What the Gemalto's platform gives you is, Gemalto's platform gives you two major things. So when we are talking about encryption of data, one of the other things that GDPR suggests is you must decouple the data with the keys with which it's encrypting. This is one of the major design principles you should always keep in mind when you're trying to design a solution that helps you in encrypting the data. It simply means when you're, you should be using, there are a couple of things when you're, you should think of when you're designing an encryption solution. One, it should be a centralized key lifecycle manager solution. So that simply means if you're using an encryption solution, you should be storing the keys and all other policies should be done from one centralized location, and they should not be over, they should not be in silos. You should be looking at the centralized approach. So Gemalto has something called a key secure platform. It is a centralized key management solution. It performs two major things. So one is, as I said, it is a complete key lifecycle manager. That means you can generate the keys, distribute the keys. The word distribute is in quotes. So generate the keys, distribute the keys, use the keys, store the keys, and delete the keys, all within the appliance's boundaries. It also performs an option where all the security policies are being done centrally. That simply means you take the control out of your organization's user end, where it says where he thinks he encrypts what he thinks is important. And most of the time, when you give individual a control saying choose the file or the folder that you want to encrypt, or choose the data that you want to encrypt or secure, they always would choose not to, just because it may cause inconvenience. It may not, but this is what they perceive. It may cause inconvenience to them. So you always take the control out of the end user in thinking what is important and what is not for our organization. All those policies must be set as organization, centralized organization policies, and not what end user think or perceive. That's one thing that KeySecure platform does. So it gives you the platform of storing the keys and making all the policies centrally. The second thing it gives you a wide range of connectors, which are Gemalto connectors, to work with to protect data at the rest. At the same time, it works with a huge number of third-party softwares and hardwares to give you the centralized key management solution by itself. So it works with a solution called Protect V that you can use for a virtual machine encryption if you're using VMware, if you're using AWS, if you're using Azure. It doesn't matter. It's simply, if you're using any of the cloud services from IBM Software, from Fujitsu, from AWS, or from Azure, you can simply use this particular solution to encrypt the virtual machines. That simply means if someone copies the virtual machine, takes it out, he will not be able to boot the virtual machine or mount the virtual machine just because it's encrypted. The second solution that we have on the left-hand side is the Protect token, or the tokenization. This is the securest way of encrypting. It is one of the most popular solutions in the PCI DSS industry, where when you store the credit card number and the expiry date of the credit card within a database, you tokenize it. That simply means you completely change the sensitive credit card number into a non-sensitive number, which is not mathematically linked to the credit card. So when you get a token, it is impossible for you to calculate your way back to credit card number. So that's one use case for tokenization. The other use case for tokenization, which will also help you in achieving GDPR, is when you want to share your data with third parties for testing purposes, or within your own team for testing purposes. What you can actually do is you can simply tokenize your entire database. Just because it's a format preserving one, that simply means if you give it characters, it'll give you characters. It'll give you, if you give it numbers, alphanumeric numbers, it'll give you back alphanumeric numbers. Date, it'll give you date. If you give it an email address, it'll give you back an email address. However, completely changed, not mathematically related to the actual data that you give it to. So that's tokenization for you. Protect app is a set of APIs that we share to perform encryption and decryption at the application level. So if there are data that you identify that when you are storing the data, you want it to be stored as encrypted. So the people like database administrators or the backup administrators, none of them can actually have access to the actual data. Use our application level APIs and encrypt the data at the application layer itself. This is the fastest way of encryption. This is the fastest encryption just because it happens at the application layer. Then we have Protect DB solution. This works with three major databases: Oracle, MS SQL, and DB2. It is a column level encryption solution. It doesn't require any change in your application code. It sits at the database server level, and you can encrypt absolutely any column that you want by simply clicking next, 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 and you're done. It doesn't, as I said, it doesn't require any application level change. However, it does make few changes in the databases, so I can share more information if required. Protect file, as the name suggests, it's a files and folder level encryption solution. works super well with the likes of Windows, Linux, AIX. You can simply define which file or which...
Manoj, sorry to interrupt. I appear to have lost your slide, the visuals for your slides. Can you just check that? That's super. Thank you. That's back up and running. Thank you.
Perfect. So, thank you, Shauna. So, Protect File is a files and folder level encryption solution. You can simply define which file or which folder that you want to encrypt, and you can define a lot of different access policies around this. This simply means you can define users, the domain users or the local users. You can simply define if they must have encrypt write, encrypt decrypt write, which is like a complete full write on it, or write where that you only want to give a backup user or backup software, and not only to a user. You don't even want to give it a user, to give any rights to a user, only want to give rights to a software. For example, if it's a backup software, you always want to take the backup of the encrypted data. Now you can simply give that backup software rights of saying this backup software has access to encrypted data only. So when that backup software runs in the background, try to dump everything on a secure storage, it is actually taking the encrypted data and then dumping onto the secure storage. Now, in case of disaster, if you lose this particular server, then you can simply copy that encrypted data, put it back into the same folder, point the right key to the folder, and it'll simply work. However, when the data is being stored in the storage, just because it's encrypted, if someone tries to steal that, your data is still encrypted and it's of no one's use. Then with the key secure device, as I said, these are all these solutions that you see on the left hand side. These are all Gemalto solutions. However, we also support something called KMIP, a Key Management Interoperability Protocol. That simply means any software, any hardware that supports KMIP can be integrated with key secure device. Things like Dell component self-encrypting drives, NetApp NSEs, Nutanix. There's so many of them. There's a huge list that you can simply use that works with a key secure device. This is exactly how, sorry, I lost the focus. So this is exactly how the whole thing looks like. It doesn't contain the KMIP connectors, softwares or hardwares. However, it's huge. The other thing that I forgot to mention is you can actually also protect your databases using Protect File solution. And in fact, the big data databases like Hadoop are being protected by the likes of Protect File, where you can encrypt the folder in which all your database files are residing. So this is a different type of granularity that you get from these connectors. If you want to choose what kind of connectors you can use in your environment, or you can suggest your customers to be used in certain environment, this is a slide that you should be looking at. You have to first understand where exactly your data resides, if it resides on databases or it resides on files and folders or shares. Do you want to encrypt at the column level or the whole database file level? Then depending upon what kind of solution that you can carry, you can either use Protect DB, Protect App, or tokenization. If it's a whole database file, you can use something called TDE, or the Transparent Data Encryption, which is a standard practice for Oracle and MS SQL. However, if you use Oracle and MS SQL, the actual key is stored within the Oracle server itself. Now, the one thing that I said GDPR say is to decouple the data with the key. That simply means anyone who has access to the data must not have access to the key. Anyone who has access to the key must not have access to the data. That simply means if you're using TDE, then you can use the key secure device to store the master key of Oracle or MS SQL. If you do that, if someone copies the entire, for example, entire Oracle or entire MS SQL, then he walks out with the entire database. However, he walks out with the encrypted data just because the key with which rest of the other stuff was encrypted resides in the key secure device, which is a super secure place. You cannot take the key out of the key secure device. Or if you want to use a whole database encryption files, you can use protect file. If you want to now come on the right hand side, if you want to encrypt files, folder, shares, if you want to do it at the file level or the block level, you can simply choose which particular solution that you want to use. In a summary, 74, as I said, 70% of the breaches are due to weak and stolen passwords. Gemalto has its own two-factor authentication solution that you can use to protect to avoid using passwords when you are using it with the VPN access, the cloud application like Office 365 and all, anything that uses SAML or ADFS. 80% of the security investment to the parametric security. You should also invest, or you must also invest now, in the data security or the encryption of the data, which is using one of these connectors that I just explained. 90% of the companies do not have any policies around key material. That simply means the centralized key management solution that I just suggested. So this is how it all looks like. So encrypt the data, secure and manage the keys, and control the access to the applications and the databases and the data. So this is something that you can do if you're trying to achieve GDPR. Again, as I said earlier as well, there is no silver bullet, and even Shauna said the same thing, there's no silver bullet. You should be looking at protecting the data first and then move your way up. All the other securities that you need to must put considering the fact that after breaching every other security, if someone reaches your data is still encrypted. If they're able to take away the data, it's of no use and no one else would use. So that's where you should think when you're thinking of GDPR. I hope I was able to cover most of the stuff and was able to clear some points with the GDPR. Now let's open it up for the questions.
Okay, thank you, Manoj. So just if anyone's got any questions around the effect of encryption on GDPR or any of the solutions and key management or encryption, please do take time now to drop them into the questions box, and I'll post them. I do have a couple that have come in, so I'll start with those while people put the thinking cap on and pop a few more questions down. So I have a question on data notification.
Yes.
Does data encryption require to meet certain standards in order to allow companies to not disclose or publicly report a breach? Are there any minimal standards that data encryption needs to have?
So when it comes to the data encryption, as I said, if you have decoupled the data from the key, so if you know that at the first thing that you know is the data is not residing at the same place where the key is. So if someone walks away with the data, he didn't walk away with the key with which the data was encrypted. So that means the data was encrypted and stored at one place, and the key with which it was encrypted and stored was at a different place. Now, if someone steals the data, then you're sure that he didn't steal the key, because it's impossible to steal the key. So if someone walks away with the data, you know he walked away with the encrypted data. That simply means you don't have to report the breach.
Okay, and secondary question as regards breach reporting. So companies, do companies still have to report a breach to the ICO within 72 hours if the data is encrypted? And do they have, if the data is encrypted, can they simply declare this, or do they have to provide breach analysis to show this?
It's a little unclear in terms of if they have to show the breach analysis. However, they can choose not to report the breach if the data is encrypted. do they have to show the breach analysis? However, this is something which is a little gray area where if they can explain that the data was decoupled with the key and the data was encrypted and even walked away with the encrypted data, I don't think they have to go through the whole of the breach analysis. Companies can choose to do that. However, yeah, I need to know, I need to read more into GDPR if they have to actually do the breach analysis in case the data was encrypted. I'll note down as a question.
Okay, so that's the two questions that I have at the moment. Can I just take sort of 30 seconds, a minute to gather any further questions from the audience? Whilst I do that, I just want to thank Manoj for his time, and also thank everyone for their time in attending today as well. Oh, I do have another question just popped in. So, just a question around hybrid environments, Manoj. How would the Gemalto solution work in a hybrid environment with data held in both Office 365 and also in on-premise database and file stores?
Oh, perfect. Very good question. When you're talking about the cloud applications, however, Office 365 may not be the right example. However, when you work in a hybrid environment where you have data in both the places, for example, you have AWS cloud, you have Azure data in the Azure, IBM software, or for example any other local data center which you chose. Gemalto's solutions are all the connectors that I showed you are completely cloud agnostic. That's one. The other thing is the key secure platform actually comes in two different flavors. It comes as a hardware, it also comes as a virtual machine. If you go on AWS Marketplace, you will be able to see Gemalto's key secure available there. You can simply go there, configure it for yourself, provision it for yourself, buy the licenses from Gemalto, and you can also put the same virtual key secure in your VMware environment in your local data center. Sync both of them, for example, and then they both will have the same keys. Okay, now you can encrypt the data in your data center, which is your on-premise data center, send the encrypted data to be stored on AWS and access it there just because you have the same key secure device, same set of keys available there as well. So Gemalto solution works absolutely wonderful in a hybrid environment. Why I said Office 365 is not the right example for this is because Office 365 is not something that you control from the backend perspective. You can't choose what to encrypt, what not to encrypt in Office 365 environment. It's Microsoft to decide. However, you can control access to Office 365 by using strong authentication, two-factor authentication. You can make sure that any of your users of your organizations are not sharing their Office 365 password with their friends to make so that they have access to Office 365 and stuff like that. So make sure that you put two-factor authentication in place when you're using Office 365 so that it's not been shared across and no one can break the password when they access it.
Okay, thank you. And just one final question. You mentioned the availability of Gemalto within the AWS environment. Does that apply with Azure, Microsoft Azure Marketplace as well?
So at the present moment, you can use all the connectors in the Azure Marketplace. As I said, these are cloud agnostics. And the key secure will be available in next few weeks in Azure platform as well. So if you're planning to use or encrypted data in the Azure platform, it will be available super soon.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone, and thank you very much, Manoj, for your time. So once again, just to reiterate, we will make the recording of the session today available post-webinar, as well as the slides. If you have any further questions about anything, please do drop me them across, and I will make sure those are addressed within the Bytes team. Thank you, everyone, time and good morning. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.